he's a player's manager. Like, every guy that plays for Schneids loves playing for him. He taught me a lot of really valuable lessons throughout my playing time, just on, accountability and consistency. So he had coached me my very first year and had a pretty big impact.
Welcome to episode 353 of Alberta Dugout Stories, the podcast. I'm Joe McFarland. Happy National Coaches Week, one and all. A tip of the cap to all of those who are bringing out the best in the next generation of baseball stars. We have a special edition of the show coming up as current Parkland minor ball coach and former Toronto Blue Jays prospect Shane Dawson Jr. joins us in just a few minutes. First, the news headlines, and we'll start in Major League Baseball, where the Chicago Cubs activated Calgary's Michael Soroka on Monday after his lengthy stint on the IL. He's faced some criticism since being acquired at the deadline from the Nationals, then getting hurt in his first start. He was asked right out of the gate whether he'd be using that as a chip on the shoulder.
It's always more along the lines of proving people right. There's a lot more people that mean a lot more to me that believed in me, and some people that I've worked hard with over the last month to get to here. So the training staff's been great. Zombro and Tommy and Casey, the whole pitching staff has been really good at working on a lot of things. Just looking to go let it rip and compete with this team.
And let it rip he did Monday night as he went 2 innings of no-hit relief, walking 2 and striking out 2 in the Cubs' 4-0 victory over Pittsburgh. The Cubs also cemented their spot in the postseason Wednesday night, so hopefully we get to see more of Mike in the weeks ahead. It's been a busy few days for Edmonton's Eric Sabrowski, who's made 4 appearances in the last 7 days. The AHP product allowed just 1 hit and 3 walks while striking out 4 in those 4 games. He now owns a 1.78 ERA and 29 relief appearances on the season, striking out 34 in 25 plus. It's been quite a while since we last updated you on former Medicine Hat Maverick Jacob Webb. The Texas Rangers reliever has gone 6 straight outings without allowing a run. He's 5-4 on the season with a 3.34 ERA in 51 appearances. To the minors we go as things start to slow down a little bit with the playoffs underway at a couple of levels. It's been a good couple of days for Dogs alum Tristan Peters as he settles back down with the AAA Durham Bulls. He hit a 2-run home run on Sunday, then followed that up with this on Wednesday.
The pitch is hit in the air to right field. Camilletti going back. It's over his head, back to the wall, and in the first row. And the Ramos error at third cost McKendry 3 runs. Tristan Peters, 15th home run, and Ramos at third base, scratching his chin, looking straight down to the dirt. His misplay cost McHenry 3.
Peters is hitting .265 on the season with 15 homers and 75 RBI in 132 games. Vauxhall Academy grad Damiano Parmigiani was assigned to the Double-A New Hampshire Fisher Cats September 5th, where he's now on a 6-game hitting streak. He's hitting .200 with 2 RBI and 4 runs scored in 8 games at that level. An update on former Okotoks Dogs hurler Shea Shanneman, who spent most of the season with Double-A Columbus Clingstones. He's 3-2 with a 7.06 ERA and 25 relief appearances, striking out 25 and 29 plus innings of work. Also in Double-A, Gavin Logan was back at it on Tuesday as the Amarillo Sod Poodles entered the playoffs.
The 1-1 to Logan. And he hits it high in the air, deep to left field. Logan has the Soddies on the board. He sends it to City Hall, a 2-run homer over bar 352, exactly what Amarillo needed.
The Sod Poodles lost that game 8-7. Game 2 of their series goes tonight, being Thursday, in case you're listening the day this episode drops. The Dogs product finished the regular season hitting .233 with 8 homers and 31 RBI in 64 games across 3 levels. What a year it was for Calgary's Cohen Aiken in his first full season of pro ball. He split it between single A, high A, and double A, going a combined 7-8 with a 3.35 ERA in 22 games, including 10 starts. He also struck out 68 in 80 plus. Nathan Llewellyn's season is over after the Bowling Green Hot Rods were dumped from playoff contention. The Innisfail native and Red Deer minor baseball St. Joe's Academy Sylvan Lake Gulls alum hit .250 with 3 RBI in 5 games for the Hot Rods after being promoted from Charleston in early September. After the baseball season comes to a complete end, we'll be doing a full recap story with all of the different players connected to Alberta and Saskatchewan and how they did in the pros. We'll also be bringing you a few conversations conversations from the minors and future podcast episodes, so make sure to subscribe on your podcast app. The big news around the baseball world in Alberta this week is the Blue Jays Academy Canadian Future Showcase, which is happening in Toronto as we record this episode. Scout Day was Tuesday, followed by game days Wednesday and Thursday. The championship game and the home run derby are set for Friday. It'll be interesting to see if Alberta can go 3 for 3 at the derby, as the previous two winners were Nathan Flewelling in 2023 and Tim Piazentine in 2024. We'll have a full wrap on the festivities on next week's show, and of course at albertadugoutstories.com and saskatchewandugoutstories.com. A couple of showcase tournaments held last weekend with some great baseball action. Congratulations to the Edmonton Collegiate Hawks white team on knocking off ECH Navy 10-9 in the final of their home tournament, which featured a variety of teams from across the province. Lucas Geisler led the way, going 4 for 4 with 2 doubles, a triple, and 7 RBI to be named finals MVP. And in Sylvan Lake, the second annual Gulls Rising Stars Classic was another rousing success with 5 teams taking part. In speaking with Jason Chatwood, it sounds like every team could beat any other team all weekend long, with Vauxhall, Going Yard, and AHP all picking up 2 wins each. They didn't have a championship game this time around. Now on to this week's guest, and it's been a while since we've done a one-guest episode, but when a former Toronto Blue Jays prospect comes calling, you take advantage of the situation, especially as the Jays are getting very close to winning the AL East. Shane Dawson Jr. was a 17th round pick of the Jays back in 2012 after a career that took him through Fort McMurray, Drayton Valley, and Prairie Baseball Academy in Lethbridge. He had a 6-year minor league career capped off by 2 seasons with the AA New Hampshire Fisher Cats. He then spent 1 year with the Winnipeg Goldeyes in 2018 before calling it a pro career. He moved back and was actually a guest way back on episode 12 of the show when he and former Battery mate Danny Jansen came to Calgary with Strive Baseball. Dawson's now a head coach and technical director with Parkland Minor Ball and has coached with Baseball Alberta's women's team, among others. It was great to catch up with him to talk about his baseball journey, what he's been up to recently, and his thoughts on playing for a young up-and-coming coach in the Blue Jay system by the name of John Schneider.
Shane, thanks so much for joining us here on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Quite the journey you've been on over the last, decade or two, frankly. But let's get the backstory first and foremost. I love asking the origin story for baseball, athletes, coaches, etc. How did you get in the game in the first place?
Yeah. Well, originally I'm from Fort McMurray, so I lived in Fort McMurray until I was 14 years old, and then I moved to Drayton Valley. So growing up, my dad played fast pitch softball in Fort McMurray on a men's league team. So when I was young, I was always around a diamond. And then I ended up playing softball on my older sister's team for about 6 years before I played baseball. So I skipped all the T-ball and coach pitch stuff. And, once I started playing baseball and, being left-handed and threw a little bit harder than some of the other kids, it kind of fell in place and fell in love with the game there, and moved to Drayton Valley, and that ended up being a pretty important time in my life. 14 years old, getting in front of some more coaches, some Team Alberta coaches, and eventually some college coaches, going down the road. So that's kind of my before college journey, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Were you all baseball all the time growing up, or was it a bunch of different sports?
No, there was, a couple-year period I played some hockey. I played basketball pretty much growing up my whole life. My dad and my sister were both college basketball players. So I played high school basketball all the way through. Played a little bit of volleyball, did a little bit of track, but mostly baseball and basketball.
Do you remember the moment for yourself where you went, hey, I'm going to focus in on baseball, and hey, I really want to chase this dream?
I don't know if I have a pinpointed moment, but I know growing up I always wanted to be a professional baseball player. I still play basketball, but my goal was always to play professional baseball.
Mm-hmm. Looking back, especially in those early years, do you have favorite memories or moments on the field where you're like, okay, this is pretty cool?
That's a tough question. You're making me think back. At the high school level, I think once I started playing in Spruce Grove was when I really started to see that the dream could become a reality. I had some good coaches in the Spruce Grove area, Rob Boyk and Chris James, and some other guys in the area that coached me through my high school time. Like I was coached by Mike Johnson for a small period of time, and I'm still friends with a lot of the guys that I had played with on that Spruce Grove team. I was actually just down in Saskatoon, and I got to link back up with Chance Wheatley, who I played with in Spruce Grove, and we shared some stories about this
cool.
Alaska trip that we did when we were in high school and how much fun it was, and kind of reminisced on that, and even talked about possibly setting something like that up for the athletes that I'm coaching now, because those experiences were awesome.
That is fantastic. Let's share a couple of the anecdotes from Alaska here. Like, what was that like, especially as a high school kid, spreading your wings and flying almost?
Yeah, that was one of the first big trips I had ever been on. My mom or my dad didn't join me on that one, so we went down to Kamloops first and did the Sussex Classic. And we actually won that tournament. And then from there, we drove to Seattle, jumped on a plane ride, and went to Anchorage, Alaska. And we were in 2 tournaments in Alaska. There was one in Kenai Landing, it was called, a really, really small fishing town. And we stayed at these cabins as a team right off of a river that was fed by the ocean. And it was really cool because at that point in time of the year, like, the sun doesn't set. So we played, I think we played like a midnight game, started at midnight, and it was like middle of the day. And it was a super, super beautiful place, lots of big pine trees and bald eagles everywhere. And it was good baseball as well. So we stayed there for, I think, a week and a half, played in 2 tournaments, and it was just a cool experience. And at the time, the Alaska Summer Collegiate League was pretty strong, so we got to go see some games and saw some guys throwing mid-90s, and in high school you're just like, holy, so it was just a really cool experience, and get to go somewhere that I don't think a lot of people get to go, so it was fun to share that experience with some of my teammates.
I bet, and especially now that you're looking back on it going, hey, maybe we could do something similar for some of the kids nowadays. That's got to be kind of cool, just to even percolate the idea of, hey, maybe we should do this again. Yeah,
absolutely. I think the kids would enjoy it. Our athletes have gotten the benefit of doing some pretty cool trips. They've been going to Spokane every summer, which is a cool tournament. The Langley tournament and going to the Lower Mainland is always great. The weather's always good. The competition is always excellent. This past year, we went for spring break to Arizona, and we got to go to a couple big league games and meet some big league players and coaches that I played with or played for, as well as Mike Johnson, because he's with our program now as well. So we're starting to kind of build some of those experiences, hopefully for the kids, where when they're 30 years old, hopefully giving back to the community, they can say, when I was your guys' age, I got to do some of these cool things and meet some of these cool players. So
for sure. Yeah, we're going to get into some of the thought processes on coaching in a second. Want to go back in time again, and you end up heading a little bit further south as well during your journey. You end up at Prairie Baseball Academy. Looking back on it, what did that program mean to you, not just as a ball player, but also as a human being?
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the most important times, if not the most important time in my playing career. Coming out of high school, I threw pretty hard, and I had some scouts at some of the games that I was pitching at. But one of the things that I thought Prairie Baseball Academy did for me was, it taught me how to, set a routine, get in the weight room, learn how to take care of the smaller things, time management, body management, and it taught me how to be more mature and go through the process the right way, where if I was drafted out of high school, I think I would have had to learn that lesson the hard way and maybe not have as much grace, because at the college level of PBA, they're trying to develop athletes to move them on, whether that's physically, whether that's maturity wise, and you don't always get those opportunities afforded to you in professional baseball. For some guys, it's it's time to perform or you got to go home. So for me, getting that experience of playing at a higher level and playing against hitters who knew how to game plan really set me up for college. And I was still pretty young. Like, I got drafted, I was still 18 years old. But I felt like, compared to some of my peers, I was a little bit more mature than the guys that were the same age, because they were playing high schoolers. I was playing college baseball players.
For sure. Let's talk about that day you were drafted, 2012, 17th round by the Blue Jays. Do you remember where you were when you got that phone call?
Yeah, I had just dropped my younger sister off at school, and I was ordering Subway. I was getting some lunch, ordering some Subway, and yeah, my sandwich was like halfway done, and I got the phone call and just turned around and walked out of the Subway and never went back for my sandwich.
In those days, like, social media is kind of there, but were you paying attention to it? You certainly didn't have the kind of coverage that you see, it seems, nowadays. Were you even aware that, hey, this was a possibility?
Yeah, so I got to talk to some scouts before the draft, and at least in conversations that we had, they said, we're looking to take you. They didn't really give me when, but my coaches at Prairie Baseball Academy had players that had gone through the draft before, whether it was directly through their program or guys that they had moved on. And, they kind of prepped me for being a day 3 guy. So I kind of knew that was the day it was going to happen. There was a little bit of a scare on day 1. I guess not a scare, but there's a player with a pretty similar name to me, and my parents had it kind of on in the background. I think it was like Shane Davison or something, or something along those lines. And, we had a little bit of a heart palpitation, but yeah, I felt relatively confident and prepared for the days coming in, talking with my coaches and talking with some of the scouts come draft day.
You spent 6 years in that organization, got to play with and against some dudes in the game. Any favorite memories during your time with the Jays?
Yeah, I think kind of the first one that comes up is winning the championship with the Vancouver Canadians. Kind of an underdog group. We had a lot of Canadian guys on the team. We had a lot of senior sign guys on the team. So it was a bunch of guys that were really trying to prove themselves and prove to the organization that they deserved to be there. And it was just a really fun kind of month and a half that I was there. The stadium is always packed. The city treats you very, very well. And, up until I had played in some of the other events, that was kind of the closest to a big league experience that I had. So that's kind of the first one. Blue Jays specific, I guess, would be getting to go to Montreal and play with the big league team against the Boston Red Sox. It was kind of my first taste of the big league experience, and it was a packed crowd. I think there was, close to 50,000 people there. And one of the first times I got to pitch in front of my family in Canada. And the first 4 guys I faced were all-stars, were MVPs, were silver sluggers at some point. So I got to face David Ortiz, Hanley Ramirez, Pablo Sandoval, and Brock Holt were the first 4 guys I got to face. So that was a really, really cool experience, as well as getting to meet Pedro Martinez before the game. And, he was my idol growing up.
Oh, cool.
So being able to talk to him a little bit and shake his hand and get a picture was kind of a bucket list thing for me.
For sure. Looking back on it, how cool was that, being the Canadian kid playing for the Vancouver Canadians, playing in the Toronto Blue Jays system, getting to go to Montreal, all those things, because it's one thing to do it as an American or somebody from another country, but you're doing it for a team that is near and dear to the hearts of Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
Yeah, it was a dream come true. I wouldn't trade those experiences or opportunities for the world. I think the Blue Jays organization do it right with having Vancouver as one of their minor league organizations, and they do a really good job of treating the players right. giving them the experience of what professional baseball is going to look like moving forward. And, it's hard not to be excited about playing in front of, 6,000, 5,000 fans every single day. Not very many minor league teams can say that they can do that on a consistent basis.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets you ready moving forward. And then obviously going to Montreal is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. They don't do that trip anymore, I don't think, which is too bad, because I played with a lot of guys who also got that opportunity, and it's a highlight for every single one of those guys, whether Andrew Case or Vlad Guerrero hitting the walk-off homer. I think that was they did it. Those are memories that I'm sure Vlad Guerrero has a lot of big league memories, but that's probably up there for him, right? The stadium that his dad played at. I wouldn't trade those for the world. Awesome opportunities.
Safe to say you'd be a proponent of the Expos returning to Montreal at some point?
Of course. I think baseball in Canada is thriving. I think, Toronto probably likes the fact that they're the only big league team up there, and, they get a hold of 36 million people to watch their games. But there's no reason why we couldn't have a team in Montreal and just have an awesome, New York Yankees, Boston Red Sox rivalry type thing on the north side of the border.
For sure. Looking back on that journey, especially in the Jays system, who is that one guy that stepped into the clubhouse or stepped onto the field and you're like, yeah, that's a baller. Like he's going to go places.
Yeah, I kind of have two firsthand experiences that fall in line with that. Within the Blue Jays organization, it was during Instructional League one year, and it was right after we drafted Jeff Hoffman.
Mm-hmm.
And him and I got to play catch, and I, would catch his flat ground. I loved catching flat grounds and all that kind of stuff. And that was the first time where somebody threw to me, and I was like, this guy's a hands-down big leaguer. I've never seen stuff move that way before. Fastball has life. Slider is too plain and firm, and like the breaking ball falls off the table. That was the first time where I was like, this guy has hands down big league stuff. And then the other time was when I was in Vancouver. It was right after the draft, and we were playing the Boise Hawks, and Chris Bryant had just gotten drafted second overall and played a 5-game home set against us and played every game, and I think he got out 3 times.
Oh, geez.
And we were looking across the field like that's what an all-star looks like in a future MVP, apparently. And it was just really eye-opening to see, there's a lot of talented players in the big leagues and in the minor leagues, but when you see those kind of guys, you're like, holy, that's something different. Mm-hmm. So those were kind of the first 2 times for me.
Going back to Hoffman for a second, how cool has it been to watch his career kind of come full circle and end up back in Toronto and being in the thick of a divisional championship race here and watching him do his thing with the Jays now? Yeah,
it's been awesome. I think, guys that leave the organization and come back are always excited to come back, right? The coaching staff has been pretty consistent over the past couple of years. Like John Schneider was the manager in rookie ball when I first got drafted, and he's kind of gone up through the system with a lot of those guys, Bo and Vlad, and Jeff Hoffman as well. So I think, there's a reason why those guys end up coming back and sticking around for a while, is because I think they do a good job of keeping it consistent and treating their players right. And, obviously it's nice to see a guy like Jeff kind of get his groove back and hash out a role for himself that allows him to compete on, some of the best teams in the big leagues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Phillies really wanted him, and now we got him, and he's doing great things for us, and we're in a good spot.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned Schneids. Give us the inside scoop as a young ball player with a fairly young coach at the helm who's now in the big leagues. What was he like back in the day?
Yeah, he's a player's manager. Like every guy that plays for Schneids loves playing for him. He taught me a lot of really valuable lessons throughout my playing time just on, accountability and consistency. So he had coached me my very first year. and had a pretty big impact on my baseball career, because that was kind of the formative years of my career, kind of being a small town guy and then getting up to professional baseball and not really knowing what it's all about. He's a consummate pro, does things the right way, cares about his players, and definitely looks after his players. He doesn't let things happen to his players without somebody taking care of it. So.
How much of an influence does a guy like Schneids, or maybe there's some others along the line, factor into the transition that you're now going through as a head coach?
They're obviously monumental through my career. I can think of multiple conversations with coaches that I had that are now conversations that I'm having with kids in my program. I think of conversations that I had with Vince Horstman, who was my pitching coach for a number of years, Stubby Clapp, who was a hitting coach in the Blue Jays organization while I was in the Blue Jays organization, and he was also one of my coaches on Team Canada a couple times. Just the conversations that I've had with them, I can see myself echoing to the players that I've had in previous and current years.
Go back to 2019 for a second, and you make that transition from player to eventually coaching. Was that something in your mind that you always knew you'd come back to at some point when the pro ball playing career was over?
I don't know if I was completely sold on it. I just know I always wanted to do something in athletics. So whether I was playing or whether I was coaching, I think, it just made an easy transition for me. I thought about maybe trying to get into scouting a little bit. But I really enjoy the aspect of trying to help these kids get some of the experiences and opportunities that I had when I played. And, for most of the kids, it's trying to get them to post-secondary and give them a good opportunity to get an education while playing baseball. But there's been opportunities with some kids who have flashes of pro potential, and just, teaching them how to be a pro and how to look like a pro, and, what scouts are looking for, and things like that. So I'm just trying to be as beneficial to these kids as I can. And I love my job. There's a lot of other things I could be doing at this time, but every day that I'm working with kids on the baseball side of things, that, I just feel, vindicated.
Looking back on the last few years here, any highlights of being the coach, as being the guy that some of these young guys can lean on?
Yeah. I think some of the biggest things that I hang my hat on over the past couple of years is helping kids who probably didn't think they had any opportunities to play college baseball, helping them transform themselves into a college baseball player. So there's some players that, are currently playing college baseball now that, if you would have talked to them in 10th grade, they would have thought they had no chance. And, they love baseball, want to play high school baseball, and move on. But now they're getting a college education and playing college baseball at a high level. And, those are kind of the stories I like to hang my hat on. There's lots of really, really talented kids who don't need me per se. They're going to be college baseball players with or without me, but it's those kids who, have transformed themselves into college baseball players and have had access to my knowledge or Mike Johnson's knowledge or our other coaches, have taken that and ran with it and turned themselves into college baseball players.
How much of it is the awareness piece for these kids and understanding that, hey, the world's a lot smaller than it used to be? Like, even back in your day, you had social media and I'll call it infancy, but you've got the ability now where you can put yourself in front of a camera, or you can get yourself in front of these coaches and these scouts a lot more readily than you could have 20, 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is perspective for them. I think, it's like you said, it's a lot easier to get, your game and your profile in front of coaches through, PBR, perfect game, all that stuff. And my conversation with the kids is just go about things the way that you should. You don't have to be anybody you're not. And, if you play the game the right way and play hard, coaches are going to hear about it, see you online, whatever. but learning how to play the game is most important. And once you know how to play the game and you play it the right way, a lot of those things kind of fall in place nowadays. Not a lot of people get missed anymore.
For sure. A few more for you before we let you go here, Shane. First off, what's it mean to you to be able to give back to the game at the grassroots level like you are now?
It's awesome. I really enjoy working with the younger groups and helping them develop a passion for the game. Because there's, a lot of things out there, hockey, basketball, soccer, whatever. And I think from my perspective, I've played a lot of sports. I think baseball gives you the highest chance of learning life lessons that will translate moving forward. I don't think there's any other game that has as much failure as baseball. And I think it kind of breeds a sense of resiliency that not a lot of other sports can kind of compare. So teaching the kids to learn how to deal with failure and adjust from failure, if we can do that at a young age, I think we're going to build a community of upstanding citizens and hard workers. And, that's something that I really enjoy seeing. I like when we graduate players off and then they come back and they give back to the community and they want to coach and help kids get better. I think that's kind of the culture and cycle that we want to continue on in Parkland.
For sure. Speaking of advice, I know it's individual, but if you had a broad stroke kind of answer for these young kids who are just starting out on their baseball journeys and they want to get to the pros, they want to live out the baseball dream, what would you say to them? What do you want to impart upon them?
Yeah, it's kind of easy to just say the standard stuff of play the game hard, play the game the right way, and have fun. I think if I were to make it a little bit more specific about kind of the landscape of baseball as it is right now, is learn how to play the game. It's really easy to get caught up in throwing as hard as you can, hitting balls 400 feet, all that stuff. All that stuff is great, but you need to know how to play the game. Coaches are looking for players who know how to run bunt plays, cuts and relays, pick plays, how to have good team at-bats, move guys over, get guys in. To me, I think if young players learn how to do that at an early age and then they get bigger and stronger, they'll be way ahead of their competition.
When you look at the scene in Alberta specifically, what do you see nowadays?
I think baseball in Alberta is on the up and coming. Over the past couple of years, we've had some really, really talented players through the province who are doing great things in high school baseball, college baseball, and professional baseball. So, I think our province is heading in the right direction. I think if we come together as a province and we put an action plan together to help develop athletes as a group, that I think we can catch up to the Ontarios and the BCs and the Quebecs. But we have really, really talented players all throughout the province, and it's nice to see some of these guys taking advantage of the opportunities they're given.
Final one we ask everybody here on the show, Shane, what does the game of baseball mean to you?
Game of baseball means a lot to me. It taught me how to be the man I am today. It's afforded me a lot of opportunities that I don't think I would have had otherwise. It kept me out of trouble when I was a young kid, and everything I do, I relate back to baseball. There's always some lesson from baseball that I've learned that applies to every situation that I have in life. I think it's probably the most impactful thing that's been a part of my life and continues to impact me positively. And I'd have to lose my memory to get rid of this game. I'll always keep it with me. And it's really, really important to me.
Well, it's been great to be able to catch up and talk about your journey in the game. Congratulations, Shane, on all the successes, both as a player and now as a coach, and continued success going forward. And thanks again so much for joining us here on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate the call, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Shane Dawson Jr. for joining us this week, and thanks to all of you for downloading and listening. We have a full slate of shows coming your way in the weeks ahead. As mentioned, we'll be recapping the Canadian Future Showcase next week. We'll be chatting about the WCBL awards when they are handed out, and we're also aiming to bring you a special show from this year's Alberta Sports Hall of Fame and Museum induction ceremony, which is going on later this month. A handful of baseball people, including Orr Franchuk, Randy Gregg, Mel Kowalchuk, Reno Lizzie, and W.P. Kinsella are part of the class of 2025, so stay tuned for those episodes and much more. As always, a tip of the cap to our Platinum supporters, the Okotoks Dogs, Under the Lights Sports and Entertainment, and the Western Canadian Baseball League for their continued generosity in helping us tell the game stories in our province. For more on our tremendous teammates, head to albertadugoutstories.com/supporters. Until next time, thank you for all of your support, online, on social, and on air, of Alberta Dugout Stories.